Loki was more than just a playful trickster. He was the beginning of the end for both the gods and the Norse world. Simply put, Loki was the embodiment of chaos, acting as he pleased, regardless of the consequences. And even with all of this, Loki retained the charm that drew others to him. Loki wasn't good, and Loki wasn't evil. He was just Loki. With the popularity of Norse mythology, due to Marvel's influence through its shows and movies, Loki has become a very popular god, known, loved, and hated by many. And of course, in the movies and the Disney series, Loki is extremely entertaining. But what was Loki from the Norse stories really like? In this video, we'll look at who Loki was, some of the more famous stories and tricks he's played, as well as his very strange, yet fascinating family. If you do enjoy this video, please like and subscribe for more content on mythology, history, philosophy, and more. Now let's get into the video. Loki was the trickster god of Norse mythology, and he certainly lived up to the title. He was the child of an Aesir god and a Jotunn. Jotunn are often referred to as giants, and to many this is peculiar as the Aesir and giants have hated each other essentially from the beginning of creation. Yet interestingly, they frequently end up having children with each other. This creates a really interesting love-hate relationship between the two camps. And to me, this is a demonstration of how what is considered good and what is considered evil can often overlap and intertwine. Kind of like the concept of yin and yang. Light and dark seem separate, yet there's a bit of light in the dark and dark in the light. And this comes into fruition when you look at the characters of Norse gods and giants. In fact, most people would be surprised to know that Odin himself was half giant and half Aesir god. Although Loki is usually counted as an Aesir god, he is technically a Jotunn, a giant. And what distinguished his classification from Odin's was the race of their fathers. While Loki's father was a giant, Odin's father, called Bor, was an Aesir, and due to Norse culture at the time, a child was considered to be whatever their father was. So Loki was technically a giant, however, he was accepted amongst the Aesir due to his relationship with Odin. And here's another surprise for you. Contrary to the stories in the Marvel franchise, Loki is not considered to be Thor's adopted brother. Loki and Odin were the ones that were adopted brothers within the mythos. Sources vary on whether they were adopted or blood brothers, but they definitely had a close relationship. In fact, he often accompanies Odin and Thor on their adventures, causing mischief and chaos along the way, as you would expect from a trickster god. When we try to find the meaning of Loki's name, we're essentially trying to understand the origins of his name, looking at the roots and the history of the word. In Loki's case, it's a bit more complicated, as there's a huge debate regarding the origins of his name. According to some scholars, Loki's name was derived from the Germanic word Logi, which means fire or blaze. And from this theory, Jacob Grimm believed that Loki was a fire god initially, before he was a trickster, due to the similarity between the words Loki and Logi. This is actually quite humorous, since in one of his stories, Loki had an eating contest with a fire demon whose name was Logi, and he lost. Other ideas are that Loki's name is derived from the word Luka, which means to end, or from Lukan, which means the closer, both meanings possibly alluding to the role Loki played in the end of the world and the gods, bringing a close to the previous world and ushering a new one through Ragnarok. In one source describing Loki, called the Prose Edda, which contained Norse mythology and folklore, it says he was continually involving the Aesir in great difficulties, and he often helped them out again. In another source, it says, just when we've decided he's a villain, he does something heroic. Just when we're sure he's a fool, he does something intelligent. Yes, the trickster does charm us, even when we know he's lying. I think both of these statements do an amazing job in summarizing Loki's character. He was both good and evil simultaneously, but I don't think he could really be called either. His character in the stories is always defying expectation. In some texts, he's presented as devilish, and in others, just as a helpful trickster. But ultimately, Loki is hard to categorize into one box. I think with the more I learn about different myths, whether it be West African, East Asian, or European folklore, they seem to vary so significantly from the Judeo-Christian beliefs that draw such a strong separation between what is good and evil. In other folklore, there seems to be a much more complicated understanding of good and evil. So far, we know that the one expectation we should have of Loki is for him to do the unexpected. and this even extends to the kind of children he had. In fact, I think Loki had some of the strangest children in mythology. Each was completely different from the other, and each had their own crazy story. The most popular of his children were Fenrir, Hel, and Jörmungandr. All of the children were prophesied to participate in the destruction of the gods, leading to the Aesir gods separating them as children. If you've played God of War 2018 or Ragnarok, you've probably heard of Jörmungandr. He's also known as the World Serpent or the Midgard Serpent. Jörmungandr was prophesied to kill and be killed by Thor during Ragnarok. And because of this prophecy, when he was young, Odin had him thrown into the sea and hoped that it would drown him. However, the opposite was true, because Jörmungandr grew to an enormous size. He became so large that he wrapped himself around the whole world. This feat earned him the title of World Serpent. I think his stance against the Aesir gods in Ragnarok makes a bit of sense, since they did attempt to kill him as a child. But what do you think about that? Let me know in the comments. Fenrir was Loki's child as well as a giant wolf. As a child, he was taken from his family in Jotunheim, which was the realm of the Jotun, or the giant, and taken to Asgard, the realm of the Aesir gods. And this was because Fenrir was prophesied to kill Odin during the events of Ragnarok. Fenrir was initially kept as a pet by the gods. However, he grew at an extremely fast rate. He did manage to form a strong friendship though, with Tyr, the god of war and justice. Odin and the Norse gods tried to bind Fenrir to prevent him from being a threat in the future due to his size. They used a range of powerful chains to try to bind him, initially presenting it as a game to Fenrir, who easily broke the chains. Ultimately, they were able to craft a chain called the entangler, which looks like a woman's hair ribbon, and this made Fenrir suspicious, as it seemed too easy to break. And there was no honor in that, and so Fenrir suspected foul play. He asked one of the gods to put a hand in his mouth before agreeing to be bound by the entangler. Tyr, his only friend at the time, was the only one to volunteer. And after realizing he could not break the binds, he bit off Tyr's hand. The gods laughed and placed a sword in his mouth, preventing him from making noise and howling. They then bound the rope to a large rock and left. So although he's often presented as an antagonist due to the heavily Christianized lens of Norse mythology, the original Norse stories take a more nuanced approach, which acknowledges Odin's own contribution to Fenrir's hatred towards him. Hel is described as having half her body being a decomposing corpse and her other half being a beautiful woman, representing her duality of life and death. When Odin comes to separate her from her family, he sent her to the realm of Helheim, the land of the dead. He supposedly granted her authority over the 9 realms. However, she really only had power in Hel, where she ruled over the dead. Yet, neither Hel or the dead were allowed to leave, making them all prisoners. The souls that went to Hel were those who did not die from battle, so dying from old age, sickness, etc. However, it's important to note that Hel isn't depicted as a place of torment the way we understand it. Sources suggest that the dead were treated well in the Norse myth. I honestly think Loki's children are interesting enough to have their own dedicated videos, but let me know what you'd like to see in the comments and subscribe so you can see future videos. Balder's death was probably Loki's most infamous trick, and it seemed he did it not for malicious intent, but just for the challenge of killing something that seemed to be unkillable. Balder was the god of light and the son of Odin. He was loved by all the gods. He was invulnerable to all harm except for one thing, and that was mistletoe. And this is because his mother had made every creature on earth vow to never injure him. However, she had forgotten to ask mistletoe to make the same vow, as to her it just seemed like a harmless plant. But Loki knew that mistletoe was capable of killing Balder, and used this to execute his plan. For entertainment, the gods would usually throw objects at Balder, knowing that he couldn't be harmed or killed. Knowing this, Loki crafted a spear made of mistletoe, and tricks the blind god Hoda into throwing the mistletoe spear that he had created. This killed Balder on impact, and caused a chain of events that would lead to Ragnarok, the eventual destruction of the world. I hope you all enjoyed today's video and learned something new. Please subscribe, like, and turn on post notifications to join the learner community. I hope you have a good day, and yeah, keep learning.